10,000 years ago, long before the first cities rose in the New World, there was a kingdom on the land that would one day be called America. A kingdom ruled not by democracy, not by freedom, but by the iron hand of one man, a king whose pride was greater than his power, and whose decisions would echo through time. Picture it, vast forests stretching endlessly, rivers flowing like silver veins across the land, and towering wooden palisades marking the heart of a mighty kingdom. In this land, ruled by fear and loyalty, one man stood above all, the king of Unace. His throne was carved from stone, his crown from hammered copper, his word sharper than any blade. He was not just a ruler, he was a god in the eyes of his people. But even gods can be defied. The king had a son, his only heir. The boy was strong, clever, and loved by the people. But more dangerous than his courage was his heart. For the prince had fallen in love. And not with a noble woman of the court. Not with a princess from a neighboring tribe. He loved a girl of no status, no fortune, no royal blood. She was the daughter of a musician, a simple woman who carried in her voice the songs of rivers and in her spirit the freedom of the forest. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was untamed. The prince met her in secret. Hidden by the canopy of ancient trees, they would sit by the riverside, speaking not of war or crowns, but of dreams. Dreams of a life far from the fortress, of a family built not on power, but on love. In her laughter he found peace. In his eyes she found courage. But forbidden love is always dangerous. Word spread. Whispers carried from servants to guards, from guards to advisors, until they reached the ears of the king himself. And when the king learned of his son's love, his fury was like a storm. "My blood will not be poisoned by weakness," he thundered. "My heir will not marry a girl of no name." The girl was seized, torn from the prince's arms, dragged through the palace halls and taken far, far away, beyond the forests, beyond the rivers, to a prison carved into the wilderness itself. A place where no man ventured, where silence itself seemed eternal. The prince begged. He argued. He even threatened. But the king was unmovable. "Forget her," he ordered. "Your duty is to the throne, not to your heart." And so, the girl vanished from the world. Years passed. The kingdom thrived under the king's rule. The prince grew older, trained for war, and learned the duties of leadership. But the shadow of that love never left him. Some nights, people swore they saw him wandering the palace walls, staring into the distance as though searching for a ghost. Then one day the silence was broken. Messengers rode into the capital with news. The girl, long forgotten, long believed to have wasted away in her prison, had returned. The court gathered in the great hall. The king sat on his throne of stone, his eyes sharp as blades. The prince, heart pounding, stood by his side. Servants, guards, and advisors packed the chamber, whispering in disbelief. And then the doors opened. She walked in. But she was not alone. At her side, clinging to her dress, were children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 children, their faces pale but their eyes burning with life. They looked alike. Each carried the same spark, the same sharp jawline, the same proud stance that the prince himself bore. Gasps filled the hall. Some cried out in shock. Others crossed themselves as though they had seen a ghost. The king leaned forward, his voice cold, cutting through the noise. "Whose children are these?" The girl said nothing. She only lowered her gaze, her hand resting gently on the head of the youngest child. The prince froze. His breath caught. He knew the truth, but he could not speak it, not yet. The court erupted in whispers. How could she, locked away in exile, return with children? Were they born of guards? Of strangers? Of sin? Or, do they belong to the prince himself? The king's eyes burned with suspicion, rage, and something else, fear. The girl finally raised her head. Her voice, though quiet, carried across the hall. "These children are not a curse. They are not a shame. They are a truth your pride could not destroy." But still, she did not reveal whose children they truly were. Not yet. And in that moment, the kingdom of Unace held its breath. Because if the children were hers alone, they were a scandal. But if they were the prince's, they were a threat. A rival bloodline. A new claim to the throne. And for a king whose power was built on pride, there could be no greater danger. 6 children born in silence, raised in shadows, whose blood truly flows through their veins. The answer would shake a kingdom to its core. Sometimes love doesn't die in exile, it grows stronger in silence. The court trembled. The hall was still buzzing with whispers, each one sharper than a dagger. The girl stood proudly, her 6 children gathered close, while the king's fury thundered in silence. The prince, his heart racing, his palms trembling, knew the truth. These were not the children of strangers. They were his blood, his legacy. But how? How could their secret have remained hidden? How could she, cast away into exile, return with the living proof of their love? The answer was simple. Their love had never been broken. The hidden vows. Long before the girl was dragged into isolation, long before the king discovered their love, the prince had made a choice. In the quiet of night, away from the palace walls, they had spoken vows to one another. Not with witnesses, not with pomp or celebration, just with the stars above and the river flowing at their feet. They bound themselves in secret, a union not recognized by the throne, but sanctified by their hearts. The prince had sworn that no king, no decree, no exile could erase what they had promised. And in that promise children were born. In the wilderness of her prison she raised them, alone yet not broken. She sang the songs of her people, taught them the strength of silence and the beauty of music. She told them stories of their father, not as a prince, not as an heir to a throne, but as a man who loved them before they were even born. Her loneliness became their education. Her pain became their strength. And those 6 children grew with a fire in their eyes that came from 2 worlds, the nobility of their father and the resilience of their mother. The king's wrath. The king could not accept it. He would not accept it. "You dare shame me?" he roared. His voice shook the very stones of the hall. "You dare create heirs in secret? You dare defy my throne?" The girl's eyes did not waver. For years she had suffered in silence, but now she stood tall. "It was never your throne we served. It was love. And love is greater than your pride." Gasps spread through the court. No one dared speak to the king in such a way. Yet here she was, fragile in frame, yet unshakable in spirit. The prince stepped forward, his voice steady. "Father, they are my children. My blood. My future. If you destroy them, you destroy me as well." The king's face darkened. His son had confessed the unthinkable: rebellion, betrayal, treachery. The court divided. Whispers spread like wildfire. Some advisors murmured that the children should be accepted. After all, they were of royal blood. Others argued that their very existence threatened the line of succession. One elder, trembling with age, dared to speak. "My king, perhaps destiny has chosen this path. Perhaps your son has created heirs meant to rule." The king's fist slammed into the throne. "Destiny bows to me," he thundered. "Not to bastards born of exile." The word cut through the hall like a blade. Bastards. The children shrank behind their mother, their wide eyes watching as their grandfather denied their blood. The prince's face burned with rage. "They are not bastards. They are my children. And one day they will inherit what is rightfully theirs." The court fell into silence. For the first time the kingdom of Yune stood divided, not by war, not by invaders, but by blood itself. Father versus son. That night, the prince confronted his father in private chambers. Torches flickered, shadows stretching across the stone walls. "Why do you hate them?" he demanded. "They are innocent. They have done nothing but live." The king's voice was low, but every word dripped with venom. "Because they are a reminder of my weakness. Because they are a stain on my reign. Because you, my only son, chose love over loyalty." "And what is loyalty without love?" the prince shot back. "What kind of kingdom survives on fear alone?" The king's eyes narrowed. "One that lasts forever." The silence between them was heavier than stone. 2 men, father and son, king and heir, bound by blood, yet torn apart by pride. The prince knew then, this was not just about love. This was about power. If the children lived, they would always be a threat to the king's authority. And the king would never forgive that. The woman's strength. Meanwhile, the girl gathered her children in the quiet of the night. She told them stories not of kings and crowns, but of courage. She spoke of their father's love, of the vows they made in secret, of the music that lived in their veins. She knew danger loomed. She saw it in the king's eyes, heard it in the silence of the court. But she refused to let fear define them. "Remember this," she whispered. "You were born not in weakness, but in defiance. Your blood carries 2 worlds, the strength of your father and the freedom of your mother. No king can take that from you." The children nodded, their small hands clutching hers, their eyes filled with both fear and fire. The rising storm. Days turned into weeks, but the tension never broke. The king could not sleep, haunted by the thought of 6 children growing into rivals. The court buzzed with rumors. Some believed the children would be killed, others that they would be hidden away, erased from history. The prince stood guard, refusing to let harm touch them. His defiance only deepened the wound between him and his father. And then, one fateful morning, the king summoned the entire kingdom to the great hall. Banners were raised, torches lit, the air heavy with expectation. The girl, the prince, and their 6 children were brought before the throne once more. The people gathered in silence, their eyes wide with fear and anticipation. The king's voice echoed through the chamber. This ends today. The fate of love. The fate of blood. The fate of an entire kingdom. Balanced on the edge of the king's pride, love can defy kings, but no love escapes the blade of pride. The great hall of Eunice was silent. Hundreds of eyes fixed on the throne, where the king sat like a shadow carved in stone. Before him stood his son, the woman once exiled, and 6 children, innocent, trembling, yet defiant in their silence. The king's voice cut through the air like thunder. This ends today. There will be no whispers, no rivals, no threats to my crown. The crowd stirred, but no one dared speak. The prince stepped forward, his jaw tight. Father, listen to me. These are my children, your blood, your legacy. If you destroy them, you destroy yourself. The king's face was carved with fury. My legacy is strength, not weakness. My legacy is obedience, not rebellion. You have broken your duty. You have shamed my throne. The woman's voice rang out, clear and unwavering. It is not shame to love. It is not betrayal to follow the heart. But it is cruelty, my king, to kill what is innocent. The court gasped. She had spoken what no one else dared. Her eyes, once filled with fear, now burned with defiance. The king rose from his throne. You dare lecture me in my own hall? You dare stand against me with your children of disobedience? The prince's hand went to his sword, but he did not draw it. His voice shook with restrained rage. If you harm them, you will not be remembered as a king. You will be remembered as a tyrant. The sentence. The king raised his hand. Guards stepped forward, their spears glinting. The children huddled close to their mother, their small faces pressed against her arms. The king's words fell like an axe. Take them. Take the woman. Take the prince. End this betrayal. End it forever. The court erupted into cries of horror and disbelief. Some fell to their knees, begging the king for mercy. Others turned away, unable to watch. The prince shouted, his voice echoing through the chamber. Father, if you do this, you will destroy not me, but yourself. The people will never forgive. History will never forget. But the king's pride was stronger than his fear. The execution. They were dragged into the square, the entire kingdom summoned to witness the king's justice. The sky was gray, the air heavy, as though the heavens themselves mourned. The woman held her children close, whispering soft words, her voice trembling yet calm. Be strong. Remember who you are. No blade can cut the truth from your blood. The prince struggled, fighting against the chains that bound him. His eyes locked on his father's, burning with hatred, with grief, with love that refused to die. The king stood above them all, his crown glinting like fire, his voice ringing cold. Let all who watch remember, pride cannot be broken and kings cannot be defied. And then, with one brutal gesture, he gave the order. The prince and the woman were executed before the eyes of their people. The crowd wailed. Some turned away in sorrow. Others cursed the throne under their breath. And the children, those 6 small heirs, were torn from their mother's arms, their cries echoing into the darkening sky. The children's fate. What happened to them, no one knows for certain. Some say the king ordered them exiled, cast into the wilderness to vanish without a trace. Others whisper that loyal servants spirited them away, raising them in secret, protecting the bloodline of the prince until the time was right. And some believe the king had them silenced forever, ensuring that no rival heirs could ever return. But one thing was certain, their memory lived on. In the songs of the people, in the whispers of the forest, in the silence that clung to the ruins of Eunice for centuries after. The moral. The king believed he had won. He had silenced rebellion. He had erased shame. He had preserved his throne. But history is cruel. The kingdom of Eunice did not last forever. Pride cannot feed a people. Fear cannot build a legacy. And the stories that endure are never those of tyrants, but of love. The people remembered the woman who sang in exile. They remembered the prince who dared to defy power for love. They remembered the children, torn from their parents, who carried the blood of both defiance and hope. And the king? He was remembered not as a ruler, not as a god, but as the man who murdered his own blood for the sake of pride. Love may die in the flesh, but never in memory. Power fades. Crowns fall. But love, even broken, outlives kings. So remember this tale, whispered from 10,000 years ago. A tale buried in silence, yet alive in the heartbeat of history. And if stories like this stir something in you, if you believe that love, tragedy, and history still have lessons to teach us, backhand index pointing right, subscribe now. Because the past is not dead. It waits in silence to be told.